Hello, and welcome to our most recent coffee chat, brought to you by the Network for Financial Crime Prevention, or NFCP. I am your host, the founder of NFCP, Louis Vargas. And in this episode, we're so privileged to have Lucy Heavens. She is the founder and fractional CMO of Heavens Sent GTM Services. Also, why she's a big friend to the room is because she also sponsored one of our early events early this year, which was a great event, fraud event, but we'll maybe touch on that a bit later. But before we get started, I wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. I wanted to just point out that we will express our own views and opinions. This does not reflect on any behalf on our employer. I guess it's a bit different for Lucy since she works for herself. Again, if you like her services, please reach out. But again, this is just opinions and views, and all this information is shared for informational purposes only, no legal advice. And yes, and lastly, we encourage active participation via our LinkedIn channels. So once you view this, please, if you have any questions, reach out to us directly, reach out to Lucy with any questions, suggestions, concerns, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So now it's my turn to get out of the way a bit. So Lucy, can you just please introduce yourself to our community?
No problem. I'll give a little bit of a quick intro because obviously we're going to dig into it a little bit more. But so my name's Lucy Heavens. I am founder and a fractional CMO. My company is just me as solo at the moment, although I'm hoping to change that in the future. But Heavens Sent GTM Services, which is go-to-market services. So I provide go-to-market services, like it says on the tin, helping companies to grow. So that sales and marketing services help them with their go-to-market strategies. Heavens Sent is obviously a little play on my name, but the reason for that is because I Googled what Heaven Sent means, and I love the fact that it means arriving just at the right time. And this is the kind of the area of companies that I work with are startups to scale-ups. So startups that are looking to really put their foot down on the pedal and accelerate growth. And that's what I help them do.
Exactly. And like what I alluded to earlier, when we were getting started, you jumped right in and helped us already with an in-person event. So yeah, you're already doing the hard work.
Thank you.
So thanks again for joining us. And again, this is a bit of, I guess, maybe a lighter tone than we do with some of our other podcasts or webinars. This is just having a chat with you, getting to know you a bit better. And so that's why I also took off my normal background to be a bit more relaxed. So yeah, I guess let's just get into it. Let's get to know more about you. So, when we first met, you were working for Salv, which is a company out of Estonia, doing great things. But even during those conversations about trying to work on the event together, it was clear you were trying to kind of have a broader impact, as it were, which I felt quite, it kind of felt connected to you because, especially with that, because that's what we're trying to do with the community is just be a bit broader and help more as best as we can. So if you could just give us some, share with us how you went from Salv now to your own kind of business, how that transition went into consultancy and what inspired you to kind of make this move and what excites you most about this new chapter.
Yeah, thank you. So now what I'll do then is I'll give you kind of a little bit sort of more context, I suppose, to my background. So I have spent the last 26 years, I think it is now, in the fintech industry. So this was before it was actually called fintech. Back then it was just called boring old banking technology or something like that, which doesn't sound half as sexy, but yeah, it's a long time to be in the industry. But the reason I'm still in the industry is because I absolutely love it. I really do. Like literally, I always kind of joke and say that like fintech kind of runs through my veins. But you mentioned it just then. That kind of really does come across in everything that I do because I'm super passionate about the industry. And I've worked in lots of different areas of financial services. So I've worked kind of in the retail banking space. I did around 10 years in wealth and investment management. And most recently, for the last 8 years, I think it is, in the kind of the RegTech space, which spans regulatory technology, which spans kind of all of those financial services verticals. But yeah, I've always worked for tech companies. I've never had the pleasure, if that's the right word, of working for a bank.
Nice way of putting it. Nice way.
Needing to stutter when I say that, but yeah, always work for tech companies that are selling into the financial institutions. But I love it. I'm a real geek. I love technology. The reason that I moved, or I especially love and passionate about RegTech, is because I spent the first part of my kind of early career working in the retail banking sector and working more on, I suppose, more back then, sort of more innovative and kind of forward-thinking technology. So at the time, it doesn't sound it now, I'm showing my age, but at the time, it was the launch of kind of mobile banking and P2P payments and that sort of thing. We were always looking kind of around the corner all the time at what was coming next. Like, that's how fast that we had to move. And then when I went into wealth and investment management, it suddenly hit me, like it was like going back in time, like 10 years or something. And everything was at a much kind of slower pace in terms of technology adoption. But the thing I really, really loved is that the technology was there now. It wasn't that we were looking around the corner. It was right in front of us already. It was just that adoption that was at a much slower pace. And then when I kind of got exposed to the world of compliance and, the whole regulatory kind of environment, I hate to say it, but I'm just going to be blunt, but like even worse, right?
Exactly.
Passion for spreadsheets. But that fascinated me even more because I just thought, this is amazing. You see people's eyes light up when they suddenly can put down that spreadsheet and there's a system that will do the things for them and automate tasks, and yeah, I just love that. I love solving people's problems. I'm a problem solver. And so that was my journey into RegTech and why I'm so passionate about it. The second kind of reason or the sort of bit to my background on my journey is that I've never been what I call a desk marketer. And I think, to be honest, it's kind of driven a little bit by imposter syndrome. And back in the day, I when I first started and I was sort of more junior, I was really impressed or intrigued by, some of these kind of business leaders that were sitting on round tables and going to events, and they were speaking about the industry and what was going on. And I just thought, this is amazing. It's so interesting. And I just listened, went to lots of events, spoke to lots of people, picked up the phone and just said, will you have a chat with me? When LinkedIn started connecting with loads of people, but I really wanted to learn more about the industry so that I could have those good conversations with people, interesting conversations. And the more I just started to ask questions, the more people were telling me stuff, which was amazing. The more I was learning. So that's kind of where I think the whole kind of like community sort of building and then my knowledge for sort of fintech and regtech really started to build, is just having all of those conversations and being really super inquisitive. And yeah, that's when again that kind of community building started to come into play. I started a not-for-profit association. I co-founded a not-for-profit association with my colleague called RegTech Women, and that was back in 2009. 18, I think that was. And her name is Sian Lewin. She is known as Dr. RegTech. She's absolutely amazing. And both of us just thought, why are there not, sorry, Lou, but why are there so many men, at all of these events speaking? Why are there not more women? So yeah, we co-founded RegTech Women. We grew the association to just around 1,000 women. And then we merged actually with another association called Risky Women year before last in 2024. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, we merged. But in that kind of journey as like co-founding that association and then working with lots of other communities, I'm an ambassador now for Women of FinTech. I work with lots of communities. I really, again, started to understand the power of all of these people coming together with a shared interest and a shared goal. There's power in numbers, and it takes a village to, all of those sorts of quotes. But yeah, I really started to understand that actually everyone needs to come together to kind of make things happen. And then finally, I've always worked in-house as a CMO, and I love, like I say, kind of every company that I've been in, I've really helped them to grow and to, on their to put go-to-market strategies into place. and help them grow in their journey from startup to scale up. And I just realized that I wanted to do that more for more companies and offer kind of more broader services. So that's why I just decided to earlier this year to kind of branch out on my own and start my own organization and just work with lots and lots of different companies. And it's been an interesting journey. It's only been a few months, so I'm still very early. But I'm super excited because of that variety. I get to work with lots of different companies. I specialize mainly in RegTech because, like I said, it's my passion. Because I know quite a lot about RegTech, I can really make that connection between all the different types of tech firms. And I love that. I really love that. There are challenges to it. It's a little bit like the analogy I used with someone the other day. It's a little bit like if you're fostering a puppy. Like, can you imagine how you would get when you have to hand that puppy over? I train myself on that because it ends up becoming your baby a little bit, and at some point you've got to hand it back. But yeah, I'm very excited at the moment. I'm still in that kind of honeymoon phase, I suppose.
No, that's great. And I mean, I think a lot of people, including myself, struggle with finding the type of job that they're also very passionate about, right? A lot of jobs just become a job because they need to live. And even though some people do what they love, a part of it is also because they need to live, but to also be super passionate about what they do, yeah, it makes those tough days a bit easier, right? Because it's just the passion you have for it. And it's funny, the last statement you made where you feel like you're kind of a foster mom, because I have a former colleague who, in the recent years after we worked together, she's become an interim CEO, and that's how she's now made her career. And I was always wondered, CEO, that's a tough job, but now you're in there just maybe a year or two, you kind of get things set up and then you hand it over. So I could imagine she probably feels the same way, right? Because you're there, you're kind of nurturing everybody, you're trying to get everybody on the same page, but it's not your forever home, and it. So it's like, how do you kind of start differentiating or try to put those walls up to say, okay, I love you, but I gotta go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's so, I mean, I remember having a really interesting chat years ago with, I had a coach actually, and it was a point when I kind of really didn't know like where I wanted to go. I was really kind of struggling, and I knew I loved fintech, and, marketing is obviously my gig. It's what I do. And I didn't know how to kind of position myself is probably the best way to say it, although that's a bit of marketing speak. But the coach kind of really helped me think, and this is kind of the advice that I kind of give to people now. But like, get a piece of paper and literally just draw a line down the middle of the piece of paper, and on one side put, here's all the stuff that I'm good at. It doesn't have to be the stuff that you like doing necessarily, because you can be good at stuff that you don't really like. Okay. So yeah, put all the stuff that you're good at down one side. Then on the other side, put all of the stuff that you're passionate about, all the stuff you really like. And you'll start to find, like it's a Venn diagram, isn't it? You'll start to find like those overlaps between the stuff you're passionate about and the stuff that you like and what you're kind of good at. And that's where you pull all of those bits in the middle together. And that's where you're positioning. That's where you find kind of like, that's what you're going to be really good at, because you're super passionate about it and you're really good at it. So yeah, that's a nice little tip.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. It's I feel like I was also talking to somebody recently at a social event, and they were sharing how they were talking to their coach or mentor, and they had kind of a vision board, and they were kind of like, but I don't really see how that will work out, but this is kind of what I would like to do. And then lo and behold, kind of an opportunity came up, I think, to go into training or something like that. And she's like, I did it like, when she got the job, then she went back to the vision board and she's like, oh, it was there the whole time. It says that, this is the direction I should go in, but I didn't really realize it at the time. It kind of didn't make sense. So it sounds like a bit of that journey you went on with kind of listing out skills and likes and dislikes. And then, like you said, that Venn diagram kind of formed, morphed into kind of what you created now for yourself, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Sometimes the answer's right in front of you.
Yeah. Awesome. So, we talked a lot about you. I mean, you talked a lot about RegTech and how you are very passionate about it. Going into a bit of a technical question, since you've seen the kind of transition of RegTech from just being, or fintech from just being kind of this nebulous tech product, and now being adopted and really being sought after, how do you see the landscape evolving maybe in the next 2 to 3 years from where we are now to the future, especially with the rise of AI and automation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's changed a lot on one hand, but then thinking about your question, what's going to change over the next 2 to 3 years? I mean, Louis, come on, honestly, 2 to 3 years, really? Let's maybe go with a bit longer. 2 to 3 years. I'm not sure. You know, okay. We're joking aside. We know it's slow. Okay, what would we like to kind of really see happening? What is the change that I see slowly happening at the moment? And I know I hate saying this, but it's got to be kind of around AI, right? And I think the biggest shift that we're seeing is we're going from the tech talk into the business talk. So how can AI not just take over my job, but how can it actually help me? How can it help me to do stuff? So we're moving more into this kind of from this generative AI into this kind of agentic AI era, where we're not only using AI to like just answer a question for us, like ChatGPT would do, or give us a little piece of information, or just crunch some numbers for us very, very quickly. But how can it actually kind of take actions on our behalf? How can it actually do the do as well as answer the questions? And last week, actually, I moderated a roundtable, and it was really, really interesting because we were talking about AI at the end and about kind of how I hate bringing up that question, but because it gets everyone like really passionate about their kind of experiences. But someone was saying the way I kind of positioned it was that everyone in the room, like all of these chief compliance officers, almost kind of have this like sixth sense into their role, right? Like you've been doing this for a long time. You are so super skilled at what you do. You can almost like sniff the financial crime out before anything can kind of tell you that it's happening. You've got all these monitoring tools, but you can see it's there, right? But somebody kind of quoted, which I really love, and they said, yeah, but I don't trust AI to replicate that sixth sense that I have. And it really kind of like hit me when they said that, because that kind of embodies what I'm trying to say, which is how can we take that human intelligence and sixth sense that the compliance professionals have got, and then how can we get AI to help you? The two of them have got to work hand in hand, not fight against each other. So so to give you kind of a couple of examples of that, I'm working with a client at the moment that uses agentic AI for auto remediation of financial crime, like transaction monitoring alerts. So to reduce the false positives, it will auto remediate them for you. So previously AI might be used just to, speed up that process of the monitoring and the triggering of those alerts. But now you can actually get the AI to do the do and to actually kind of automatically remediate those alerts. And then there's another client that I'm working with that does it's a regulatory intelligence platform. So they are looking at all of the regulatory change that's going on at the moment and monitoring for the change. And then every time a change happens, they're kind of providing alerts to financial institutions to tell them about that change.
Right.
So, you could look at making that more proactive, that regulatory monitoring, so that it would automatically detect those new regulations, not only then tell you about and provide an alert to you, but actually assess the impact of that alert on the organization of that change, and then automatically look at their internal policies and controls and procedures and kind of initiate the updates, maybe suggest what the next appropriate action that needs to happen. This policy needs updating. You need to tweak this control because this has changed now. So yeah, we're moving from that just providing good information to actually doing useful actions for you.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, especially in this field, because with the I guess increase of technology and its efficiency, I feel like now we're just drowning in data. So I agree that I would say the next phase of this is that maybe not so much that AI or other technologies will give us the answer or do the do, but maybe just synthesize it in a way that then it makes it easier for us to then apply that gray area, that experience that we have, right? Because it's really difficult to train a computer to do that, right? Because they don't have that experience. And if you look at really what a computer was built on, right? Binary code is on or off. So it's yes or no. There's not a middle ground. I think with agentic AI, you can start seeing a bit of that, but it needs the data, right? So you would have to say, okay, look at maybe not all of our analysts, but maybe the more experienced ones, right? And if they make certain decisions or say certain things in their rationale, the AI could learn from that. And then, of course, you will still need oversight, but you could see if it could make these determinations and stuff like that on its own. I think we're still a bit away from that, but I agree with you. AI is the future. We have to learn how to work with it, not against it, because it's going to happen. But I think, the experience that we have as practitioners is definitely still needed. It's not all going to the robots. So yes, some of it is the more monotonous task, but not the really difficult task that you have to think. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
I read an article once, and it said if you think about it, the way you'd like to think about it is AI is kind of at the stage where it's like a 2-year-old. It's like a toddler at the moment. So it's very inquisitive. Like if you've got kids, you're toddlers all the time. Why? But this is a good thing because they're learning and growing, and it will grow a lot faster than a human would grow, in those kind of like years. But if you think about it that way, that like you said about those tasks, now maybe I'm taking this analogy too far, but you might ask your 2-year-old to go and put a tissue in the bin for you and to take that. But, they're constantly asking why and learning on all these things, telling them. And at some point, they're going to be able to do the washing up. Or at some point, actually, they're going to start doing kind of, driving on their own, and you don't have to drive them around. So, yeah, we've got to kind of keep feeding all of that information.
No, it's a good analogy, because I think that perfectly explains how we should adopt AI, right? Because especially in your organization, right, you're not going to say, look at all the information out there in the world and make decisions off of that, because that'll be too much. It'll introduce crazy biases and everything like that, or hallucinations. But if you direct it at data that is clean, and you approve of the previous kind of responses, there's still room for error, but still you kind of ring fencing the information you want to look at. And that's what I like with your kids, right? It's, they're with you most of the time. So that, of course, they're learning from the world around them, but they're learning mostly from you, and they're trying to replicate what you do. So that's a great analogy. I have to remember that one. You're gonna have to trademark that.
We can take that one step further. I'm terrible with this. We're taking that way too far. But take that one step further, and what you said about having it ring fenced is really important, because we're talking about ring fence in our home environment, right? We've got our own morals and rules that we kind of, I was going to say enforce on our kids, but it's not quite like that. But you know what I mean? We embed or whatever into our kind of home lives. So, our children end up growing up knowing what we think, or we hope that they understand is right and wrong, and, the rules of the household and those sorts of things. Now think about that in the corporate environment for your company. That's, your risk kind of like tolerance levels and things like that. So it is important that that it has that context, and it's not, like you said, taking all information from everywhere. It'll, like a child, it'll learn within those boundaries about what's right and what's wrong and what's It
kind of dovetails nicely into the next question I have for you, right? Like, you talk about how we can influence technology, but we could also talk about how we influence others in our community. So taking it maybe in a different direction a bit, but as a recognized thought leader, as you are, what's a trend in fintech, and RegTech that you think is overhyped, and what you think is overrated?
Okay, overhyped and underrated. So this is going to sound a little bit like I'm going back on what I said, but I think overhyped is the kind of the AI still. Again, I hate to say it, but like AI being the sort of the silver bullet for everything. We've just kind of unpacked that, so I won't go like into it too much, but like everybody's kind of slapping AI powered or whatever, on top of everything that they're doing, on all of the kind of the marketing, when actually it's really just that kind of like still sort of rule based or just kind of like automation. It's like basic kind of automation. And I think the kind of the whole hype around it often overlooks a lot of the good data, the explainability, the kind of the compliance that's needed kind of underneath all of that. And I think that's the part for me that's kind of like overlooked. I think it's like AI is going to kind of solve everything, and then they're not really like looking at all of the work that needs to be done to lay the foundations for the AI to work in the best way, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense to me.
The other overhyped, and I can't go into this too much because I don't know enough about it, but it makes me cringe. Almost like my brain shuts down every time I hear us talking in financial services about metaverse. Like anything Web3, and I've probably got a load of people now like booing and hissing at me. But honestly, there's so much kind of like buzz around it, but I'm really not seeing that adoption, and I do find it exciting. Don't get me wrong, like when you see the whole kind of augmented sort of environments, like it does excite me, but we've been talking about it for so many years. Most regulations are still kind of battling with all of these like legacy systems in-house in an actual physical office at the moment, like a virtual world. And so I just can't get over that. Sorry.
Oh no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Underrated. Oh my goodness. Totally underrated, and you brought it up a minute ago, is data quality in particular. It's kind of not very sexy, but like we were saying, for all of this really super clever innovative technology, like the kind of Web3 stuff, like AI to work, the data needs to be in a clean and structured place. We need to start talking to it as if it was a 2-year-old, right? Like, let's lay those kind of foundations. Let's not talk to a 2-year-old like they were 22. So yeah, let's make all of the data kind of focus more on the data, make sure that's it's I was going to swear then, but the crap in, crap out analogy. Let's make sure what's going in is good so that the output is just as good or even better. And then there's one area that I feel really passionate about that I think is also quite underrated. And that is actually just good old education for the financial crime teams themselves. And I think the financial crime teams are very, very good at now at kind of spotting the trends, like we say. So looking at kind of data from a transactional point of view, looking at kind of payments and sort of saying, yeah, this is not like a typical journey for these types of customers, and okay, there's something kind of dodgy going on here. But I think taking a sort of a step back and thinking all of those controls and things that we're putting in place and all those trends that they're seeing and the compliance teams are seeing, the criminals are seeing those too. And then you go and put a control in place and the criminal sees the control and then they work against that. So they're always working like one step ahead. So I think it's great that we're using that, like we say, that sixth sense and that internal kind of knowledge. But what I'd love to see is more training on like how the criminal thinks. Like, let's kind of take a step back and let's not look at it as a transaction. This is a real crime that's taking place. Like, it still baffles me, I'll be honest. Someone explained it to me, I don't get it, but why like the banks kind of have these separate AML and like fraud departments? Because a criminal doesn't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to launder money today and then tomorrow I'm going to do fraud, because they're separate. Like,
exactly.
They just commit a crime, and like that's how we should be kind of thinking about it. So I think a little bit more sort of education, I think, on financial crime and how the criminals work.
You made a lot of great points there, and I totally agree. And it is something that I said recently to a colleague is, we have to start thinking outside the box a bit more. But I think just like technology so the way I feel we're slowly adopting technology, I feel like we also have to slowly adopt the fact that we have to think outside the box and not continue following the same ways of working that we have been, right? So I've also read about how we have to rethink the 3 lines of defense. We have to, rethink how we, structure things. And that's going to take almost a revolution, because companies are very afraid of change. I mean, I guess humans are too. So it's almost where we need companies to be a bit more bold and say, okay, we'll keep running the setup the way it normally does, but also let's start looking at new ways of doing it. And then we could compare and contrast. Did we miss anything? Did we not? Is this a better setup or not? Or maybe they continue to run in parallel. But yeah, I mean, we're always playing catch up to the criminals. And I think that's the only way we could really be proactive, if we could see the full customer cycle, life cycle, have our different technologies talking together, because then we could see risk across the institution. But yeah, is it going to really get there anytime soon? I don't know if it's even the 2 to 3 3 year time frame we mentioned it would ever get there.
There's a good
Fingers
example.
crossed.
There's a good example of that actually with so there's a bank, Santander, in the UK, and they were training. They've got a kind of a new department. I can't remember what it's called, but they were training their first line of defense, the people that are kind of on the phone, when a financial crime sort of occurs, kind of more psychology sort of base like training to deal with the victims of financial crime. So what I mean by that, let me put that into perspective because I didn't explain that very well. But I think now, especially with kind of these social engineering tactics that the criminals are using, whereas before a financial crime might just be that they've stolen a credit card and they've just put a transaction through. So like going back to that kind of having that very transactional view, it would just be a case of phoning up the customer and saying, did you pay for this item or did you buy this? And them saying, no, okay, thanks. That's it. We'll look into that. Or it's, that's obviously a crime, a fraud. Now with all these kind of social engineering, you've got people that are being scammed through like a romance scam, for example, where it's going on for years that they're talking to this person via, Tinder, a dating app or whatever. And they really believe that this person is a real person and they've got a long-term relationship with them. So if you're phoning based on kind of some transaction history that you've seen that you think is potentially fraudulent, and you're phoning that customer and saying to them, did you make these payments? Yes, I did. Do you know this person? Yes, I do. I've been talking to them, never met them, never even seen their face, but been talking to them on Tinder, on this dating app for the last year. All these questions you're not good enough, right? Because it's not transactional anymore. You've really got to understand how that criminal, their playbook for a romance scam, and then ask the victim some, different types of questions. And this is where the psychology, I think, comes into it. So that's what Santander are doing. They're really trying to, lean into that and train their customer facing staff so that they can really kind of empathize and sympathize more with these really poor victims that are being socially engineered.
Yeah, and also, technology has a part in that too, right? Because now there's more deep fakes, the way they could, even if they say, okay, turn on your camera or, let's do a video chat, and you could look just like the person and sound like just like the person, but it's not, you. So, well, not them, I should say. So I think, picking up on some of those cues. I mean, even though technology is getting so well that you can't really decipher, but sometimes it's still a bit of a glitch, or you could kind of pick up on certain things. But yeah, it's tough out there. And this is also an area that we would like to touch on in our community is how do we, our main focus is our community of compliance officers. Happy Compliance Officer Day to everybody. But we're also looking at how do we share this information with society, right? And it goes to a lot of what you were talking about, like how do we teach others to avoid these red flags, how to protect themselves, because that will help in the long run, because people then understand what the red flags are and can protect themselves. But then us sitting wherever we are trying to do the same thing, hopefully reduce some of this activity, because now society is aware of what to look for and what to avoid. But yeah, I feel like it's a uphill battle.
It is. We're always trying to be one step ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I always tell people, for us, if we fail one time, that's big, because, right, we could be, we face reputational risk, we could face fines from the competent authorities or regulators. The criminal, they just have to get it right once, and they've exploited the system, and they will keep repeating that until, like you said, they see the controls now have been updated, they can't get it through anymore, and then they shift to something else or a different institution. So the stakes are high for us, unfortunately.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? That they don't have regulators or regulations that they're slowing them down, unfortunately. But there's definitely more we could do, I think.
All right, so switching gears a bit. So again, a lot of what you do is on the marketing side. So How do you help your clients stand out? With all the noise that we see in fintech and regtech, how do you help clients really craft their campaigns in a way that truly cut through and resonate with their audiences?
Yeah, I love this question. Do you know what? It's funny. Actually, the answer is really, really easy. A lot of people think it's really hard, and it's not. It's really easy. Those campaigns, those winning campaigns that cut through all of that noise, are the ones that basically stop talking about themselves and start speaking the customer's language, start speaking about the customer's world and their reality. I know this is kind of an old cliche, but what keeps a compliance officer up at night? What wakes them up at 2 a.m? What is the pressure that's coming on them from the regulator at the moment? Like you just talked about, all of that fear of reputational damage and from non-compliance. What are those big kind of concerns? And that's the biggest thing that I see, is that a lot of companies are talking about themselves too much, and not really about the challenges. The way I kind of always explain it best, it's a bit cheesy, but you think about that kind of like dating analogy, right? Like if you went on the first date with someone, you sat across the table in a restaurant from them, and they just literally talked about themselves and how great they were for an hour. I mean, honestly, would you see that person again? No. If they ask you a bunch of questions about you and what you liked, what your passions are, hobbies, what your values are, about your family, all of these things, like what challenges do you have, what are you looking for in your partner at the moment? The whole relationship kind of journey with them is going to go so much further, right? And then immediately if you're a good fit, that's a good thing. First of all, you're doing that assessment whether it's a good fit, and then you can move on to the other stages. And again, here I go again with the analogies, but taking that even further, this is how firms, it's really easy, this is how firms kind of need to think about it when they're storytelling, kind of with their and crafting their campaigns. Because you start off with that, you don't know each other at all. So, and then you kind of move into, well, what do I need to do now on that first day? I just need to get them to know me first. Just know me, that's all. Then you want to get them to like you. So once you've done the knowing and you've asked all those questions and they've asked questions about you, now you're starting to put little things in there, little hints, aren't you, of like, isn't that funny? I really love dogs too. We have a shared interest there. This is great, isn't it? So yeah, first of all, you're getting them to like you. And then the next stage is, now you want to fall in love, don't you? So now you want to move from that like into love. Now you want to make it kind of a little bit deeper. After that, you then thinking, right, okay, you're in love. This is really great. And a lot of people then sort of immediately would then jump into the, okay, let's get married. No. You're still on a journey, right? You might want to move in together first, see whether you two actually can live together, when you're in that environment. You get married, but married doesn't even stop. I've been married for 18 years now. And it's a constant work, right?
Oh,
All
yeah.
the time you're still you said that a little bit too passionately, Louis. It's still kind of constant work. Even after that, you've still got to kind of almost like go through that journey, like, every day, don't you? And keep making sure that you keep that alive. So now put that dating analogy into, a company sense. Get them to know you. This is a little bit of brand awareness. Just make sure that they know as a company who you are and what you're about. Getting them to like you. This is where you're talking about, I'll go back to what I was saying at the start, their pain points, and kind of empathizing and sympathizing with them and showing them that you understand their pain. This is the like business. Getting them to love you. This is where you start what I said about, oh, I've got a dog too, or I like dogs too. Now you can tell them that you have a solution to their problems. Only now do you tell them about the solution, not on the first meeting. Now you're telling, because you know that history. I mean, you know what they want. Now you tell them about your solution. The moving in together, maybe it's a free trial. Maybe there's a light version of this relationship that we can kind of test together. So start thinking there about promotions that you could do, and something just to kind of like tease them into experiencing what you're offering them. The getting married is obviously becoming a customer, right? This is where the two of you kind of sign that contract and you become a customer. And then that ongoing kind of bit after is your sort of relationship management. Don't ever, once they've signed the customer, that's not the end of the buying journey or the customer journey. It's the start of the next chapter. So now you've got to continuously making sure that you're telling them about your products and services, updates that you're doing to the product, making sure that they are still consuming your product to the best of its ability and they're getting the ROI from it. So yeah, I hope that kind of explains.
No, it definitely explains it, and I feel like it's a lot of what you mentioned is a lot of kind of where companies, but also like on a vendor side, but also on the buyer side, they get it wrong, right? Because they, from the vendor side, you're right. Sometimes it's just about the sale, and they look at it from that perspective. And once the sale is done, then they move on to the next customer instead of nurturing that relationship and seeing how you could take it further, and not just throwing stuff at them, but understanding again their pain points or continuing to understand their journey and what else you can help with. And a lot of the big companies unfortunately do that, right? They work on their name brand. They just said, "Oh, we're the best. You're going to come to us and you're just going to buy our product." Where some of the smaller companies like the RegTech or fintechs, they're more dynamic and nimble. And they're like, "No, we want to know from you because that'll also help us with our product." So it's a different relationship, but I think some of the bigger companies are kind of wrapping their head around that to see, to really see and kind of understand why they're losing so much market share, because it's like, wait a minute, our name doesn't take us as far as before. What's happening? And I think a lot of that is in that relationship.
Yeah, definitely. But it's like if you imagine you were, again, like on that kind of like dating app, and you were putting kind of a profile on the dating app, and you had on the top of it, I've won, so many weightlifting awards. You've really got to think about kind of that market that you're trying to kind of talk to. Okay, by putting that I've won so many weightlifting awards, you're narrowing your market there to people that are looking for a partner that is, a bit ripped. I don't know, but or they can share that kind of passion with. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, in kind of marketing or in the go-to-market terms, we call that our ICP, our ideal customer or client profile. So this is a bit that's like really important is for companies is to kind of think, okay, well, what does that ideal client profile look like first? Who is it that you're talking to? So that when you are putting up and talking about those challenges and the pains and things that I mentioned, when you are talking about your service and promoting it and what you offer, you're always referring back to that ICP and you're talking to that particular person because that's the type of person that you want to attract.
And, like I said, it is a relationship. So I think on the customer side, sometimes I feel they're a bit too guarded and not open enough to really share what their problem is because they're afraid of being upsold and maybe taken advantage of. So then what happens is they're not fully transparent, and they kind of also sometimes put the vendor into a box to say, this is what we want. Don't ask us any more questions. Give us this. And then when the vendor gives them that, and of course, it's stale because it took time to build it, or maybe it hasn't been built exactly how they envisioned because they weren't transparent enough. Then they point their finger at the vendor, said, "Hey, why did you give us this? It doesn't fit what we want." And it's like, but you only gave us this, parameters. Like, what do you accept? What else do you want from us? And so I think it's a two-way street, right? The client has to be open and transparent and just say, "Hey, this is our problem. What ideas you have for us to solve it?" Right? And then on the other side, it's like, okay, now we could get into, like you said, this is how we feel we can help. And if it's a good match, then you take it a step further. If it's not, thank you very much. We'll talk, we'll see you around. Maybe you can help us in the future. But it's this constant, like, the abrasion or, not pulling in the right direction. I think that also kind of ruins some of the opportunities there.
I think you're so spot on. And this is like, again, the way I would kind of explain it, if you think about that kind of like process that you go through for buying something, put a line in the middle of it and it sits in two halves, right? The first half is always about the problem solving. This is not about your company. I can't say that strongly enough. Don't ever say your company name in that first half of it. It's just about making sure that the buyer understands that you understand their pains and their challenges. There's nothing about your company there. It's just about you as a person building that relationship. It's only then the second half after, once you've gained their trust and you understand all their challenges, then you can start the kind of, hey, and I'm the person to solve your challenges, and here's all the reasons why.
Right.
And so many people don't really, like, companies don't understand that, and they jump straight in at the start and start talking about their company and why it's great. And that's when that butting heads happens. Then you've got to have that relationship building first, so that everything that you're doing is kind of like is relevant. Everything that's happening in that second half, then when you're speaking about yourself and your company and you're putting forward all of your case studies and your customer stories and awards that you've won, and you know, all of that sort of stuff, that has got to be relevant to the first half.
So true. We could I think we could have a whole session on just that topic. But yeah, I mean, leveraging more of your expertise in this next question is kind of, you know, social media and how do we manage that? You know, you're quite active on social media. You know, you're a top voice in in LinkedIn. You have that nice badge there. And I'm just curious, kind of, what's your approach to balancing thought leadership with practical and actionable content?
Oh, this is one of my favorite subjects. I just love this. I really do. I think for me, being kind of active on social media isn't about, the thing that I think you've got to do is kind of take a step back and think it's not about chasing those vanity metrics, for example. So like the likes and the clicks that you get, the profile views, and you know, those sorts of things. It's not about that at all. It's about being part of the conversation. Like way back, oh my goodness, again, showing my age, but like way back before sort of like LinkedIn, before LinkedIn really started, when LinkedIn was literally just that CV platform, if you remember, like everybody went onto LinkedIn because it was just a job. So if you were searching for a job, you kind of put your profile up and it was like an online CV. So back then we were just going to conferences and having conversations. And, you know, can you imagine walking into a conference, into like a networking room, and like not approaching anyone to talk, but just standing there like somebody in the street, you know, where they're like broadcasting their message saying, and guys, this is what I think. It's not how life works. It's not how human works. So that's what I always think about LinkedIn. For me, it's not the broadcasting to the room. It's the good old networking at an event, except you're doing it with hundreds more people, you know, on a platform. So yeah, for me, that's what I love about it. There's so many kind of like conversations and dialogues and things happen all the time, and that's the place to be in it. So it's a lot of just having conversations rather than the broadcasting. That's the kind of the first sort of tip. I think the second tip would be, again, you know, when you go to events and you are networking and talking, you are being yourself there. You're being really authentic. Yeah. As soon as people log on to LinkedIn, suddenly they're not authentic. They become this persona, this LinkedIn persona of a person, you know, and I think that's really been the key for me. I don't know, I'll be honest, don't know how that voice like badge works. Well, I kind of do. I know technically like how it works. I think, you know, the reason I get so much engagement on my posts, or so I'm told, like this is what people are telling me, is because every time they read my post, they can hear my voice. They're like, Lucy, I know this is coming from you. It doesn't sound like ChatGPT wrote it. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't sound like you standing up and broadcasting. It actually sounds like you. So yeah, that would be the kind of the second tip that I had. Don't make it sound like your own voice. What I tell people when I'm kind of doing LinkedIn training with people is I always say, read your post out loud before you post it, because you'll hear it in your voice. If you kind of have that little voice in your head that says, that doesn't sound anything like you, you know, then it's wrong. It's not authentic.
That's great advice, especially because, you know, I'm handling my own kind of avatar on LinkedIn, but also with NFCP, I'm trying to kind of figure out, okay, do I need to just blast a lot of content? Do I kind of hang back and only post stuff that's relevant to the times? And it's tough without much feedback, I would say. So it's like trying to find the right spots and, you know, not just overflood one day and then crickets for the next week. So it's trying to find that balance. But I think, you know, what you mentioned, especially with the voice, yeah, that's really interesting because I never thought of it like that. I hate the sound of my voice. Maybe that's one way, but one reason, because, you know, you mentioned imposter syndrome at the start of the chat, and I also suffer from that. I'm sure a lot of other people do. So I figure people don't want to, maybe don't want to hear what I have to say. So maybe I need to shape it in another way to make it seem that I'm smarter or that I know more. But I think you're totally right. I mean, the posts that I'm really passionate about and that others I think seem to kind of also relate to is natural, like natural voice, right?
Mhm.
It's not this professional voice that's kind of trying to educate. It's just like being human. So
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I think I'll go back to my kind of, I always
Yeah.
put things into two boxes. It seems now I'm learning from you actually. And like everything's two boxes. Put it into two boxes. Imagine you're scrolling through LinkedIn, right? And you're looking at your feed and you're looking at posts. One box is where you come across a post and you see something and it makes you think. You read it and you're like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I like that. And then you have another box where I'm scrolling past something and it makes me think, but it also makes me do something. Going back to the AI thing, I suppose, it makes me do something. So something I just find quite interesting, something like, oh my God, that's so interesting. I'm actually going to go and change the way I do my job and do this, or I'm going to go and try this new thing out. I'm going to go and try this new technology tool or whatever. So there's the, does it make you think? Does it make you do? So that's a kind of a filter to apply. If you can get a post that does both of those things together, makes people think and do, they're the winning posts. They're the ones that are going to get you the most engagement. So it's okay to have one that makes you think. It's okay that like a more doing one, but try and aim for something that does both.
Man, that's super interesting. Yeah, I have now a whole homework list for myself.
Awesome.
And yeah, talking, going back to the kind of putting on your thinking cap, or you're getting out your crystal ball, with kind of thinking about a prediction that you might make. So one bold prediction about the future of fin crime or RegTech, and what would it be?
Bold prediction, or
Yeah,
can I say something that I would like to see?
of course.
I really do see at the moment a path, a strong path or a journey that we're going on in the world of compliance, where we are changing that perception of compliance being like a cost center more into this kind of like growth partner. That sounds really cheesy. Right now, I hear this all the time, but compliance leaders are rarely brought into those business leadership conversations, right? Like the ones where you're saying, what new markets are we going to enter into? What new products are we going to launch? How are we going to like grow our customer base? But the reality is you can't, and as a regulated institution, you can't enter a new market or you can't launch a new product unless compliance says yes, right? And this is kind of the problem, because I can imagine them all sitting around the table going, yeah, we really want to go into this new market. But oh my goodness, who's going to go and talk to the compliance? Yeah, they're all fighting over who. So yeah, I think the winning firms will be the ones that bring that nice compliance person, because they are nice people, into that board conversation, into that leadership conversation, and actually have them to be part of those conversations about being scalable and about being strategic. They're the ones that are gonna be the winners.
I love that prediction because it makes total sense, right? Why think of us as not a partner when we want to be a partner? You're our biggest stakeholder, right? Because that's the way things happen, is that we help you facilitate the business, right? We tell you the guardrails, we tell you kind of our opinion, but then you go from there. And I think a lot of that will change, and hopefully your prediction will come true as the tone from the top changes, right? You have the right risk tolerance that's built from the top, C-suite, because if not, it's never going to get there, unfortunately. So yeah, I really hope your prediction comes true, and I hope all the C-suite people listening to this, they start, putting that seed in their brain.
Imagine that it's that cheesy phrase of like compliance by design. But I did that roundtable that I did last week. There was a quote from somebody, and he said it was something like, if it's not compliant, if it's not compliant, then it's worthless. Like it can't be sold, and I won't allow it to be sold. This person was quite strong about that. So if you think about that, why wait until the last minute when you built that kind of like product
Right.
or built that service and then go to compliance for kind of that final tick box like sign off. That's not the way that it should be. It should be in the design. So, you know, having them involved right from the start, I think is more the way to go.
No, from your lips to God's ears. Remember, it's heaven. It's heaven sent. All right. And you've been on the hot seat a long time. But one more question for you before we let you go. So you had mentioned, you know, women in RegTech, and you're very passionate about bringing their voices to the forefront. And I agree. When I was starting NFCP, you know, one of my colleagues was like, wow, you have a few collaborators already, but why are they all men? And I said, that's a great question. I've reached out to a lot of women who are just not ready to take the leap of faith. So it's not me. It's not that I haven't tried to be inclusive,
Yeah.
but you know, when we look at, like you said, when we go to these conferences, we're seeing all the people on the stage and sharing knowledge. It is more male dominated. So as you're deeply involved in this kind of, I would say, movement, or kind of helping to get maybe women more confident, I'm not sure, but what inspired you to start and continue supporting this initiative, and how do you see its role evolving in fostering diversity and inclusion in the RegTech space?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, I'm so passionate about this because, like I said, it was, you know, all those years ago, and being in this industry for so long, and just, you know, kind of growing up, I suppose, just being sort of surrounded by men, some wonderful men, don't get me wrong, some wonderful men that have really taught me so much and kind of mentored me, but also a lot of wonderful women. But yeah, then going to, you know, everything becoming, I suppose, a bit more public with kind of conferences and events, and my own journey into leadership, where, you know, at the leadership level, we're, you know, really lacking in the gender diversity front. I think that's kind of what inspired my co-founder Sean and I to start RegTech Women, because together we were just having these conversations and saying, like, where are all the women? And the crazy thing is, we know that the women are there, they just weren't being shown and being heard. So it's, you know, all it comes down to is visibility. That was kind of the problem. It was just that those women weren't visible. And that's when Sean and I said, well, how do we make them visible? Like, what is it that we need to do to make them visible? And back then, there was kind of communities, but there wasn't as many kind of communities as there are now, which I love. More communities, the better. It's not competitive. Like, we just need tons of them. So yeah, that's kind of why we started RegTech Women. And what we did was, you know, it was all about visibility. So every time that we were putting an event on, or every time that one of those big conferences came to us and said, you know, we've got this manel, as they're called, you know, like all male panel, how can you help us? We were always picking a lot of the women, these really amazing women that were kind of sitting in the, you know, behind the scenes, behind the curtains, and just encouraging them to come and kind of sit on a panel, or just do a webinar with us, or come to one of our kind of networking events where the audience was a bit smaller, so that we can kind of build their confidence and ease them sort of into it. One thing really, this is going to sound a little bit random, but I need to tell this story really quickly. But years ago, I went on a course, an amazing course, and by a woman who was actually a comedian. And she did a course on kind of like public speaking, and she did this exercise. It was brilliant, and we all got in a circle. And she said, right, I want you to go around the circle, and I'll each want you to say your name and a funny story about your name. And I stood there and I was like, oh my God, a funny story about my name. I mean, okay, heavens, like there's so many funny stories. But like, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to come up with something. And this is really intimidating, like really scary. Anyway, at the end of the session, she said, right, Lucy, what's that lady's name over there? I could not tell you. Honestly, I didn't remember. What about that lady? No idea. Moral of the story is, as you probably can guess, I was so in my own head, thinking about what I wanted to say and looking good in front of everyone and telling a funny story, that I completely forgot to listen to everybody else. And it, honestly, this story has stuck with me for years, because that's what gave me the confidence to start, you know, running a podcast, or sitting on panels, or moderating and speaking at events. Because all of these women have got that sixth sense. They're so confident and so knowledgeable and skilled within their roles. They know so much. If you can just sit down and have that conversation, like a peer-to-peer conversation, you know, why would you not be confident about that? You know, stuff. Like,
Right.
so yeah, so that was kind of the journey that we took them on. So inviting them on to having those kind of more like peer-to-peer conversations, building their confidence, and then, you know, that hopefully then led into them speaking more at events. And it was amazing to watch many women go on that journey. And now I love being parts of lots of communities, even though RegTech Women kind of doesn't exist anymore. Like I said, I'm an ambassador for Women of FinTech, and I'm part of some CMO communities as well. And I love the diversity aspect of that and helping the women within it.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, I think it's, you know, like you said, you found kind of a way to help bridge that gap for them, to get them comfortable kind of maybe getting out of their own way, right? And trusting themselves that they can, you know, be a part of these conversations. And you know, it's funny because I have a friend who's trying to like run this women empowerment kind of company and look for ways to like share information with them and, you know, get them to kind of stand out, as it were. And then I was thinking, I was like, but are you the right ambassador for that? You're a guy. Shouldn't it be a woman that's helping lift the woman up? So yeah, I think it's like a catch-22, I feel, right? Because it's like we do want women to shine. We want to, you know, elevate them where they should be. But it's like sometimes women don't do it for themselves for other reasons, right? And sometimes it's a man trying to push it, but then it's perceived in the wrong way. So I'm not saying anything. I mean, I think he's doing great stuff, and I think we'll start seeing more of that soon. But especially like in NFCP's case, I want to also promote more women in the field and kind of show that they can do what they do, you know, like you said, behind the curtain. But sometimes I feel like, is it me that should be pushing them or helping them? I don't know. I guess what advice would you give to the friendly other side, the guys who also want to support but don't want to, you know, be mansplaining or, you know, make it seem that we're pushing in, you know, you guys in a direction maybe that we shouldn't be.
I
Like,
love
what
this
advice?
question. Thank you so much for asking this. I really do love it. I think, yeah, and I get asked this a lot, by the way. And I mean, I mentor men and women, and I, to be honest, I tell the same stories and the same rules apply, and I have the same conversations as well about imposter syndrome and confidence and things like that. So I think what it comes down to is, you know, we're tribal creatures, right? We look for tribes. So I wouldn't, when you're thinking about you know, giving somebody some advice like that, you know, people will take advice or take advice better from their peers or their tribe, people in their tribe. So don't think of it as a, you know, I'm helping kind of, you know, like a woman or anything like that. You're just helping a peer at the end of the day. And I think when you reframe the conversation like that, it's it kind of, it doesn't matter then, does it?
No, you're totally right. I mean, once you said that, I'm like, man, so simple, but sometimes it's tough for your brain to wrap around it that way. But yeah, so true. I agree with that. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
And with that, we're out of time. So Lucy, I just want to thank you very much again for being a friend to NFCP, for sharing now, you know, your time with us and pearls of wisdom. And as what I mentioned earlier, if anybody has any questions or suggestions, please reach out to either myself, Lucy. As we said, she's quite active on LinkedIn, so she will respond, but she's quite busy, so give her some time, but she will get back to you.
I will. I always respond.
Yeah. And yeah, please, if you know, whoever is not following us already, follow us on LinkedIn and FCP. And also, if you want to become a member, nfcp.info, you could find out how to register there. And as for you, Lucy, I guess before we say goodbye, where can we find you? Is it the best way just to find you on LinkedIn, and then, or is there a website maybe that you want to share?
The best place is LinkedIn. Yeah, that's where I sort of seem, that's my home. So yeah, please connect with me. I don't not connect with anybody unless you look super dodgy, unless you look like a deep fake. Or the other place that you can find me, and this is a bit of a shameless plug, but I have a podcast, which is, if you are interested in anything go to market, anything kind of marketing, sales related, I've got a podcast called CMO Therapy. So that's on all your top podcast channel, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and yeah, you'll find it there.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And so when we publish this video, we will also share the link not only to the video, but we'll also be sure to share the link to the podcast to make it easier for people to find you.
Thank you for having
again,
me.
Lucy, Thanks again. Great seeing you. And yeah, have yourself a great rest of the week and weekend when you get there.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.